Hi there, Karen Flaherty from Living by Human Design. And today we're going to, in our Human Design Weather Report, we're going to be talking about the Gate 28, which is typically called the Gate of Struggle, but it's also got a lot of other names that I discovered. So let's get going. So we've got the Sun in Gate 28, and it started early this morning, October 25th, and it will go until Saturday, the 30th. And so we've got the Gate 28 down here coming off the spleen, which is another of the fear gates. We do call it the Gate of Struggle sometimes, but it's got a lot of other names, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the Gate 27 is right here coming off the sacral, and it's the Gate of Responsibility. Now it will hook up with the 50, which is in Mercury, Mars, Venus this week. So that's kind of a nice channel to have. That's all about we call it the channel of preservation, and it's about really keeping the culture and values. And we just talked about it last week, right? The Gate 50, but it happens to still be in. So the Gate 50 that we talked about last week, all about nurturing and taking care of people, now hooks up with the Gate 27, which is all about responsibility. And so that's always a nice combination. It's a very stable combination, and it's a very nurturing, and it's part of the defense circuit. And then we've also got the channel of awareness, which is up here, the 6124, which is still in transit this week, as well as our old friend, the 2034, which is defining both the sacral and the throat. And so you can see we've already got a lot of energy to start the week with all of these being defined. And then by Wednesday, Mercury moves into the Gate 57, which gives us even a little more definition, and continues to define the spleen with the channels of the brainwave and power. So these centers all stay defined for the rest of the week. So that's 5 different centers and energetically defined by just by the transits. That's a lot of energy defined. It's only one motor, which is the sacral, but it's still a lot of energy. And it will, give people the feeling like they've got the head and the ajna defined, which makes everybody pretty certain about the things that they're talking about. So that'll be interesting. So as I said, we've got the Sun in Gate 28 and the Earth in Gate 27, and they typically, at least the way I learned it, Gate 28 was called the Gate of Struggle. Now in quantum human design, Karen Curry Parker is calling it the Gate of Adventure. So we could call it adventure. And the whole reason between the struggle and the things that happen to people who happen to have this in their chart, and even those of us who don't, but happen to go through transits like we are this week, they call it the preponderance of the great, or the game player in the original I Ching. And so this is, as they describe it, it's transitoriness of power and influence. So it can be very strong. It can lead to power, but what happens, I find with a lot of my clients, is that they have things that happen, struggles that occur, especially in the first 40 years. That's what I typically see with all of my clients. I don't happen to have this in my chart. That doesn't mean I didn't have struggles the first 40 years, but I do find even more struggles with the people with the Gate 28. So it's about finding a purpose. Well, I should say the fears here are about finding your purpose, and actually the fear of death. Now, we all have the fear of death, and a lot of us want to know what our purpose is and can't find it. So what's really going on here is that once, well, at least this is the way I'm looking at it, is that once you're, in your teens and 20s and wondering why you're here, wondering what your purpose is, wondering what that fear of death is all about, because we all encounter it at one point or another, right? Whether somebody dies in our family, or we see some illness going on, or there's, a famine in some part of the world. We all, probably a lot of us, grew up with our families saying, eat everything on your plate because there are children starving elsewhere. And it's that realization that not everybody is well at all. In fact, not everybody has even an inkling as to how we're going to make our way in the world, find our purpose, and then eventually die. If we're not thinking about death in some way, shape, or form, by the time we're in our teens and 20s, we're not really living, right? It's always going to come up in some way. And so what this gate is saying is that we're all going to have the fear of death. We're all going to have the fear that we have no purpose. And therefore, the struggles are coming so that we can then create a basis of power, a basis of expertise and lessons that we've learned so that we can draw upon them and move forward. And the other half of this channel would be the gate 38, which is the gate of the fighter. So once you've learned the lessons of struggle or the ways to getting to power and greatness, then you'll be able to know what's worth fighting for. We call the gate 38 the gate of the fighter. And so basically we're learning our lessons. We're getting through the struggles, whatever those are. A lot of people, I find, among my clients, at least, they've had the death of a parent or the divorce of parents or the death of a sibling. They've flirted with, suicide or drugs or alcohol. A lot of those things come up in this gate. And again, it's only to get us to the other side, right? It's only so that we learn the lessons, so that we figure out why we're here and basically look death in the face and say, it doesn't matter. I'm taking the risks. I'm moving forward. I'm going to evolve, no matter how certain I am that death is at the end, because it is at the end for all of us. You can't get away from that. I mean, even if we have longevity in our families, you could still get hit by a bus. There's no guarantees of anything. And so, you kind of have to look at it in a way that says, I'm willing to take the risk because I've got a purpose, right? I can have the purpose. I can have my convictions of my purpose, and therefore I can look death in the face and say, I'm going to move forward anyway. I know I'm going to die at some point, but I can take those risks that I need to take and move through the fears that might show up. So that's kind of what this gate of struggle is all about. I'm coming to realize I won't, as nonchalantly call it the gate of struggle anymore, because it's really about a lot more than that. In the incarnation crosses this week, they call it the cross of the unexpected, because guess what? Struggles are usually unexpected. We don't usually expect the things that are coming up as, things that get in our way, as they're not expected, right? If they were expected, they would be part of life, but they're not expected. And that's why they trip us up sometimes. It's also the cross of risks and the cross of alignment. And then the gate 27 is the gate of responsibility. And this comes, as we saw last week in the gate 50, that's all about nurturing and the values of the tribe and really keeping the cauldron alive with all the values that we hold dear. And then the 27 is the other half of that. It's literally responsibility for, again, bringing children to adulthood. But this one is much more tangible. This gate is much more, it's not just the caring, nurturing part of it, which is much more emotional, if you will. So this one is literally the care and feeding and bringing the children to adulthood and making sure that they're taken care of. So they call it the enhancement of the quality and substance of all activities through caring. So it's that literally parenthood, and it's not just parenthood. It's literally the entire family or community that's involved in this kind of caring and nourishment. And in the gene keys, selfishness is the shadow here, altruism is the gift, and selflessness is the CD. So in the gene keys, the shadow for the gate 28 is purposelessness. So not having a purpose. The gift is totality, and the CD is immortality. So we go from purposelessness, not having a purpose at all, not knowing why we're here, and the fear of death, to totality, which he calls, basically that balancing of risk and conviction and moving forward as a result of that, and being able to move forward and not fearing death or lack of purpose. And then immortality is really moving up the scale quite a bit, where time is no longer an issue, right? Where we're living, we don't have a concept of time, therefore we don't have a concept of death. Thinking about it in terms of timing of our own death. He says immortality is the air consciousness breathes. So it's a nice thing to think about, but even Richard Rudd admits in his Gene Keys book, that we're probably not going to get there for a long time. Even if it was possible, we wouldn't have the mental capacity to really expect that. So he does say there's a deep sense of thrill that comes as you progressively face your inner demons. In other words, when we're facing death, when we're facing risks that might come up. And when we are able to come to an idea of what our purpose is, we're able to move past the demons and those fears that come up. He also says the mind cannot really grasp what immortality means. This is what I was meaning by that. And true immortality is actually the cessation of time altogether. And so if we ever get rid of time, then we may not fear death anymore, but that's probably a ways off. I've got a few personalities born in this sun gate. As you can imagine, it's kind of having the struggles, learning from the struggles, and pushing through the struggles to get to a place of power and resourcefulness and learning from the lessons, and therefore a sense of expertise, right? So people like John Cleese, Julia Roberts, Pablo Picasso, Grace Slick, Richard Dreyfuss, Jonas Salk, in coming up with the polio vaccine, John Adams, one of the first presidents in the country, Johann Strauss, the composer, and Isaac Singer, who actually invented this Singer sewing machine. So there were quite a few activities this week, or quite a few things in history. The USA Patriot Act was signed this week. The New York subway officially started running from the Brooklyn Bridge uptown to Broadway at 145th Street. So that was quite a big deal. That was in 1904. The first census was submitted, and that was in 1791. So here we are. And so here we are over 200 years later, still taking the census and still wondering what it says. 20,000 women also marched in a suffragette parade in New York, and it was the largest. And it was the largest parade at that point, or protest at that point. Harvard College was started. Black Tuesday occurred in 1929. That was the start of the Great Depression, actually. Occurred in 1929 and had a big effect on the economy, of course. In 1969, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered immediate desegregation, superseding the previous with all deliberate speed ruling that had been in effect since I believe it was 1968, just the year before. But also in 1969, the first computer-to-computer link was established, and that was through ARPANET, which was basically the forerunner of our current internet. And then just to end it off, since we'll be running into Halloween this week, H.G. Wells in 1938 ran the War of the Worlds, which was a broadcast over the radio that really had people panicking in the streets, thinking that it was a real Martian invasion. So, in 1974, the Rumble in the Jungle occurred. That was the boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. So that was a pretty big event, and actually called the event the greatest sporting event of the 20th century, as that is described. So. So this week, it's not so much about, don't think of it so much that you might be encountering struggles. That might certainly be the case, but think of it more in terms of learning from the things that have occurred in your life, therefore coming to a purpose with those and moving forward, so that you're then in the preponderance of the great realm, right? As opposed to the struggle realm. As I said, we can also call it adventures, as they do in quantum human design now. You can think of it however you like, but it's learning from the struggles that occur in the first 40-ish years of your life, so that you can have the expertise, the awareness, the understanding that then comes from having lived through those struggles and succeeded with as much, grace and ease and, understanding and patience as possible. So have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Be well.